Hey everybody, Erin Mac BS detector here. Excuse my face. I don't have any makeup on because I really just wanted to see like what did I look like with no makeup on, and it's these dark circles, bro, that are just like really driving me insane. Anyways, nobody cares about that. I hope y'all don't care. And if this mic is a little like tinny sounding, please forgive, because I think this is the one that I have two. I have this one and I have this one. And neither one of them sound great, but for the purposes of like y'all being able to hear me, I got them and sat down to film, and would you believe, literally dropped one of them in my coffee. So I was like, well, thank God it came with two. Anyways, speaking of coffee, let me go grab that. Never mind, I drank it all. I know I'm like super duper uber shiny. I just put on like a bunch of my friend at work. She's younger than me, but I literally look up to her with so many things because she's such a smart girl, and she knows all about all the skincare stuff, which I've been on YouTube watching like makeup content for years, which is the only reason why I can do a half-ass good of a job of makeup. But the skincare, I need to start following some of the skincare girlies, because I mean, you know, I've got like all these, I don't even see if you can see, wrinkles under my eyes, massive pores, whatever. I guess the front facing, when I back way up, it's like, the dark circles are pretty bad, but there's nothing I can do about that. I've literally had them my whole life. All right. This is this part 8 or is this part 9? Anyways, I'll figure it out when I'm done and I'll label it accordingly. And I think we might actually get done with it today, because we only have like, I don't know, 10 pages front and back to get through. So if I read really fast, maybe we can get through it. Okay. And I'm assuming that I had left off here at this header, which is like part 5 of, I think it's Golda Meir's writings. Let me see. I think so, because that's part 3. That's part 2. Yeah, Golda Meir wrote all this stuff about Schmionism. Okay. So, okay, I'm just going to read the last paragraph, and that way we'll know where we left off. Yasharel, anytime I say Yasharel, y'all know that stands for Israel, right? I'm not, like, I went through too much last week trying to upload this video that I literally recorded I recorded it once and tried to upload it like 5 times. And because of the word Schmionist and Yasharel that I said so many times, because I'm reading from this book, it would not even let me upload it. Their AI detected too many inflammatory words, I guess. So now I'm using code language. And what a sad state of affairs it is that we have to do this, because these freaking Jays are like the world's biggest doers of projection. Anyway, okay. Yasharel is convinced that Poland was justified in insisting upon his territorial adjustment, and Chancellor Brandt is evidence that this is the sentiment of world opinion generally. Anyone familiar with our region cannot reasonably suggest that our right to insist upon border changes is less than that of Poland. Well, I mean, honestly, you know, maybe if you guys had been from the land, then maybe, yeah, but like everybody knows you guys like don't even go there. Have y'all seen that? Was that Mean Girls? You don't even go here. Like literally, they're not from there. They are from the region that is now Eastern Europe, and they spoke Yiddish, which they've now compiled into this whole new made-up language, and they call it the revival of Hebrew. No, more like the fully new construction of Hebrew. But I digress. Let's keep reading. Total peace would be a more constructive slogan than total withdrawal. Since it may not be possible to reach total peace in a single step, Israel is willing to negotiate the immediate settlement of specific issues, notably that affecting the reopening of the Suez Canal. We have made the following proposal in regard to the Suez Canal, quote, and this was all because of Rothschild, okay? Had nothing to do with Israel. Quote, with a view to facilitating the attainment of durable peace between Yasharel and the UAR, Yasharel is prepared to consider entering into a special agreement with the UAR for the opening of the Suez Canal to international navigation, the observance of a ceasefire without limitation of time and non-resumption of fighting, and the stationing of the Yasharel Defense Forces, or the IDF, at some distance east of the Suez Canal, end quote. Don't even get me started on the IDF, okay? Like, the atrocities they've committed. And it's like an SRA. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of satanic ritual abuse, but that's how these families do, okay? They basically like conscript their youngest ones into the fold of abuse, thereby passing it down for generations and generations, right? Well, so does Yasharel with their young adults. Like, you have to give, I think it's like 4 years of your life to the IDF. Like, you don't have any choice. And that is where the main indoctrination, I think, probably, allegedly, is done, where they like literally pound into their heads. I mean, because we even know that our military, the U.S. military, has quite fully brainwashed a lot of our people. But, you know, not everybody is dumb. And there's a lot of ex-military people from our country that have been whistleblowers and have told the atrocious, heinous things they were made to do in the name of patriotism, okay? We are only patriotic to the kingdom of heaven, okay? Around here, okay? Anyways, among particulars spelled out in this proposal, the suggested agreement calls for the release of all prisoners of war within 15 days of its signing. It also states that the line to which the IDF would withdraw east of the canal would not be considered final. Subsequently, the IDF would withdraw to the boundary determined by a peace settlement. In offering, before a final peace, to forego the strategic advantage of the water barrier provided by the Suez Canal, Israel took a calculated risk as a step toward the relaxation of tension. Such a decisive concession is hardly evidence of an intractable disposition. Of the countries involved, Yasharel has the least to gain from the canal. Really? Is that why Sir Rothschild had it paid for it to be built for you guys? Because you had nothing to gain from it? I mean, like, this thing is so full of BS, bro. Like, it's almost more than I can bear. Anyway. Egypt the most. Okay, it said Israel had least to gain from the canal, but Egypt the most. Yet Egypt rejected the proposal. Yeah, because they knew that you guys were probably going to be like strong-arming them and trying to control it, basically. Egypt demands an Israeli commitment to withdraw to the June 4th, 1967 lines prior to any process of negotiation. The precondition is related not only to the negotiating an overall settlement, but to a partial Suez Canal agreement. Egypt wishes to end the negotiations even before they begin. Thus, the rigidity of this position precludes progress towards peace. And it's, you know, Egypt was probably like, yeah, no, we see what you guys are trying to do, and that's a pile of ish we don't want to step in, and I don't blame them. Because everybody knows how these double-crossing, two-timing, whoever you want to call them, we already know their game and how they operate. okay? Like, we just do. We figured it out now. We know the game and how they play it. And the world knew it before this, but they've spent like billions trying to get people to forget. And now everyone is like waking up all over again. Okay. Finally, there's the issue of the Arab refugees. I do not propose to re-argue in detail the origins of this problem. That the exodus was instigated by the Arab leadership is readily demonstrated through Arab sources. To cite just one, quote, the Arab governments told us, quote, go out so that we can get in, end quote. So we got out, but they did not get in, end quote. That the number of the authentic refugees have been grossly inflated through duplicate registrations and the accretion of Arabs from Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon to the relief rolls has been revealed by every check of the UNRWA records. Nor do I seek to minimize the wretchedness and abnormality of unproductive existence in the camps. But who bears the responsibility for this situation? The deliberate exploitation of the refugees for political ends began in 1948 and continues unabated to this day. Yeah, I bet if you let them tell it, we'd hear a whole completely different other story, but we'll never hear that story. Because they've unalived Gaddafi, they've unalived all the freaking Saddam Hussein, they've unalived all the leaders over there and spent decades of our on our media telling us how horrible these people were, when I just don't buy that, okay? I'm not buying into this whole Islamist terror. I'm not buying into any of it, okay? It's all propaganda, and you would do well to not buy into it either. The deliberate exploitation of the refugees for political ends began in 1948 and continues unabated to this day. The Arab governments have repeatedly rejected numerous lavish proposals for the solution of the Arab refugee problem. See how, like, they literally stole the land, and then now they're calling it an Arab refugee problem. It's like, they're from over there, bro. You guys are from, like, the Caucasus Mountains, which is, like, thousands of miles away. But, you know, these Arab refugees, they're the freaking problem. They make no secret of their motivation. One quotation will suffice. Quote, any discussion aimed at a solution of the Palestine problem, which will not be based on ensuring the refugees' right to annihilate Yasharel, will be regarded as a desecration of the Arab people and an act of treason, end quote. And we've got to wake up, guys. We've got to wake up, because we've been believing BS at least since probably the mid-1940s. We've been propagandized, and we have been told that, you know, God's chosen. And there is other channels. It is delighting me to see churches, pastors, talking about Schmionism and what an evil thing it is. So, you know, excuse my language, but retards like Corey from the Smart Christian channel, and the only reason I call him that, it's not a nice word, it's an ugly word, but he is shilling for these people, and you cannot tell me he is not, okay? Because he was on a live the other day, and I'm literally trying to get him to understand that just because a geopolitical country is called Israel doesn't make it the same people from the Bible. But apparently he's too dumb to understand nuance, and yet his channel name is Smart Christian. Gah! I'm sorry. It just infuriates me, all of the lies and nonsense going on this app. It infuriates me. I mean, and it's no surprise, because this is YouTube, you know. I mean, but eventually they're going to have to unalive all of us, which is in their plans. So be forewarned. Noahide laws are incoming. Anyways, let me shut up and finish reading this. Okay. A policy of calculated incitement in the camps, whose dissolution the Arab leadership refused to permit, has kept the pot boiling. As the role of second-generation refugees begins to wear thin, there has appeared the image of the Palestinian terrorists sworn to, quote, dismantle Yasharel. Yasharel has an indigenous minority of nearly 500,000 Arabs, constituting approximately 15% of the population. Israeli Arabs are equal citizens whose welfare and integration are our natural concern, but we cannot accept the repatriation of those who originally joined our enemies and in the intervening years have become a hostile army proposing to submerge Israel. And obviously, we have no common language with Palestinian irredentists, whose cry is the, quote, liquidation of Israel, or assassins who pretend to the name of, quote, revolutionaries, end quote. Remember, with these people, it's opposite day, so whatever they say, believe the opposite. During the few years since the Six-Day War, the position of the refugees in the areas administered by Yasharel has undergone substantial improvement in employment, in education, in health, and in living standards. This human progress indicates what might have been achieved during the 20 years prior to 1967 had Arab governments behaved humanely toward the refugees, their own kith and kin, rather than exploit them as a political weapon against Yasharel. So long as the ceasefire remains intact, we shall continue to do all we can to relieve the refugees of misery of the camps and restore to them their human dignity. A complete solution of the refugee problem, however, will come about only when the Arab states assume their full responsibility within the vast geography that is at their disposal. Is the conflict then irreconcilable? Let me answer plainly. I do not consider Yasharel's right to exist a theme for discussion. Of course not. As long as all Arab designs are predicated on the immediate or eventual destruction of Israel, no progress towards peace is possible. At the same time, we believe that the differences between us and the Arabs are soluble, and that because of the genuine needs of the peoples of the Middle East, reason will finally prevail. International funds, toward which Israel is prepared to contribute her share, in parentheses it says, we have offered compensation for Arab property in Israel. Yeah, they offered compensation after they just came in there and freaking took it over like at gunpoint, and then want to offer them like probably pennies on the dollar for stealing their fucking land, and then have the nerve to rewrite history books accusing Western Europeans of doing the same thing. It's like it's fucking insane is what it is. Okay. Okay, it says that Israel is prepared to contribute her share are available for the resettlement of Arab refugees still living in camps between the Mediterranean and Iraq, the original area of the mandatory Palestine. There is room for both Jaish and an Arab state. The name of the Arab state and its internal constitution and order are its responsibility and concern. I still hope that in a world that has just seen the close of the Vietnamese conflict through negotiation and a movement toward coexistence among the great powers, the many sovereign Arab states will come to terms with the idea of Jewish national independence, and with the reality of Yasharel, the one small land in which that independence can flourish. Genuine peace requires more than a signature to an agreement. That signature is a beginning. It is the passage to a bridge of understanding and of cooperation between many nations, which will move ideas and goods. My vision of peace is regional exchange and cooperation, and who can deny that there is much to be done for the good of this area? We do not make this a condition for signing a peace agreement. We register it as an expression of the quality of relations we would wish to see develop between ourselves and our neighbors in peace. And then it has in this little box here, what is Schmionism? Let's hear what their lies have to say. Schmionism is the modern expression of the ancient Jaish heritage. There is no ancient Jaish heritage. There's ancient Hebrew heritage, and that is totally over with now. Schmionism is the national liberation movement of a people exiled from its historic homeland and dispersed among the nations of the world. Bro, y'all ain't the same people. Schmionism is the redemption of an ancient nation from a tragic lot and the redemption of a land neglected for centuries. Lies. Schmionism is the revival of an ancient language and culture in which the vision of universal peace has been a central theme. revival, creation. Okay, it's not a revival of a language. This language that they have made up is made up. Schmionism is creating a society, however imperfect it may still be, which tries to implement the highest ideals of democracy, political, social, and cultural, for all the inhabitants of Israel, irrespective of nation, of religious belief, race, or sex. Bro, they are such liars. Because they are supremacists. Schmionism is, in sum, the constant and unrelenting effort of to realize the nation and universal vision of the prophets of Yasharel. Y'all killed. Okay, first of all, y'all aren't even the people, okay? And the actual real people unalived all the prophets. So what the fuck are y'all even talking about, Golda Meir? Okay. The Jays in Jerusalem. In the course of its history, Jerusalem has known many rulers, but only for the Jays 3 times in its history. It has been the capital of the nation living in this land from 1000 BCE. It was the capital of the kingdom of David and his successors. Y'all ain't the freaking people of David, all right? Let's see. From 516 BCE until the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, it was again the capital of the Jewish people. In 1948, it became our capital once more. First of all, no, because they are trying to equate Jayishness with Judean people. Judeans and Jews are totally separate. They're not the same. And Corey from Smart Christian Channel would do good to realize that. Well, it says Jew in my Bible. Well, your Bible's full of shit. I mean, like, get the net, dude. Learn nuance. Learn to differentiate between things. Just because the word no, N-O, and K-N-O-W sounds the same, that doesn't mean it is the same. God. All right. Okay. All other times, Jerusalem was ruled by foreigners who treated it as a provincial town. Babylonians in the 6th century BCE, Greeks in the 2nd century BCE, Romans in the years of 70 to 324 CE, Byzantines in 324 to 614, and the Persians briefly after them, Arabs in 638 to 1099, Crusaders in 1099 to 1187, Ayyubids and Mamluks in 1187 to 1517, Ottomans 1517 to 1917, British from 1917 to 1948. See, I don't think that the Brits actually controlled it. I think that it was kind of just sitting there, and, you know, the Ottoman Empire having kind of been defeated, it wasn't Britain's to give, okay? Just because they beat the Ottoman Empire or whatever, it was not theirs to give. Anyways, okay. Between 1948 and 1967, a part of the city was ruled by Jordan from the Hashemite capital in Amman. The Jays of Jerusalem today are the inhabitants with the longest unbroken historical association with it. Lies. Their memory of it is recorded in the Bible. Lies. The Mishnah and the Talmud. A satanic, disgusting book. In prayer and poetry. 3 times a day for 1900 years, Jays have prayed to return to Jerusalem. Once every year on Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the month of Av, they have fasted and mourned the destruction of Jerusalem. On festivals, they bless each other. Quote, next year in Jerusalem. They've been playing pretend, bro, for like 1,000 years at least. This bond of Jewish memory is engraved upon the ancient stones of Jerusalem, and structures now being uncovered by archaeologists. Remnants have been revealed of the city of David and the days of the First Temple, and of the period of the Second Temple. The western wall of the Second Temple still stands, a focus of Jewish longing for 19 centuries, where they now like sit there and hump the air and pray over and over and hump. That's what they're doing, okay? I know you've seen videos of it. That's what they're doing. Fucking weirdos. The story of the Jewish attachment to Jerusalem under alien domination is an unremitting struggle to preserve a Jewish presence in it, never allowing the link to be broken. The Babylonians destroyed the city. 70 years later, the Jews were rebuilding it. The Romans destroyed it and changed its name to Aelia Capitolina, and the Bar Kokhba revolt of 132 through 135 CE, which cost 500,000 Jewish lives, was a last desperate attempt to oust the Romans and free Jerusalem. The Byzantines denied Jews the right to live in Jerusalem. The Crusaders massacred the Jewish population of the city. The Jordanian government destroyed the ancient Jewish quarter in the old city and barred Jews from entry, even as tourists. You guys aren't really Hebrews, okay? Let's understand that. You're trying to create confusion. You guys have been sowing confusion. Yet, despite bans and persecution, Jews maintain an almost continuous presence in Jerusalem. When expelled, they always returned. From time to time, they were even helped by foreign rulers. In 515 BCE, Cyrus of Persia allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem from exile in Babylon to rebuild the city and revive their national life. Yeah, and y'all are of no relation to those people. In 362 CE, the Roman Emperor Julian the Apostate promised the Jews that he would restore Jerusalem to them and sanction the reconstruction of the temple. The Persians, who took Jerusalem in 614 CE, handed it over to the Jews, and for the next 3 years it was ruled by Jews. The Caliph Abd el-Malik, who built the Dome of the Rock in 691 CE, gave Jewish families hereditary rights as caretakers on the Temple Mount. They were not Jewish. They were fucking Hebrew. What do you not understand about that? I mean, this is a stolen idea. This is a matter of stolen identity here, people. Jerusalem under foreign rule. More often than not, under foreign rule, Jerusalem fell into decay. When Jews were allowed to re-enter, it prospered again. Before the destruction of the Second Temple, Jerusalem had a population of 200,000. Subsequently, it became a provincial townlet. Under the Byzantines, the population was 80,000. After the Arab conquest in the 7th century, it declined to 30,000. In early Crusader times, it was as low as 3,000. Then it rose to 30,000, only to drop back towards 10,000 towards the end of the Mamluk period. Under the Ottomans, it ranged between 10,000 and 15,000. The Jews were the first in the mid-19th century to build new quarters outside the wall of the old city. From then on, there was a rapid rise in the city's population and in the proportion of Jews in it. It is now more than 100 years since the Jews again became and remain a majority. This is revisionist history also that you're reading from Golda Meir, okay? Don't believe a word of it. Although the Jews have been a majority of the population for over a century, allegedly, I'll say. Under British rule, 1918 to 1948, Jerusalem was administered throughout by a municipality with an Arab or British mayor. Only after the establishment of Yasharel could the inhabitants of the Jewish part elect a municipality of their own. But for 19 years, it was a city divided. Jerusalem, capital of Yasharel. In 1948, Jerusalem became once more the capital of a sovereign Jewish state. Not a Judean state or a Hebrew state, but Jewish. White people from Eastern Europe who practice Judaism, not Torah. Okay? Jerusalem is the seat of the president of the Knesset, which is the parliament, the Supreme Court, the government ministries, the chief rabbinate, and the Jewish agency, the headquarters of the Schmionism movement, and many other religious and cultural Jewish institutions. In 1967, Jerusalem became once more a single unified city, and 19 years of abnormal division of barbed wire and concrete barriers came to an end. Never before in its history had Jerusalem been thus divided, reunified, and it remains the capital of Yasharel, spiritual shrine, and center of all Jews on earth. In reunified Jerusalem, the Jews remain the majority that they had been for the past 100 and more years. They've never been the majority because they're not the same people. Jerusalem and Christianity. What fellowship hath light with darkness? The Christian link with Jerusalem begins with Jesus of Nazareth and the traditional association of many places in the city with the story of his life and death. This is essentially a religious link with no element of national culture in it. It is neither political nor secular. In the course of time, many places of worship were built by Christians in various denominations such as the Orthodox, Greek, Syrian, and Armenian, Catholics, Greek and Roman, Copts, Ethiopians, Protestants, and Anglicans. But for no church, then or now, does Jerusalem represent its world center. The churches with a world center have established it anywhere but in Jerusalem. For instance, the Catholic Church in Rome. 3 times in its history, Jerusalem was ruled by Christians. In the Byzantine period, as a provincial town in which Christian institutions predominated. Under Crusader rule, when the conquerors from Western Europe repressed the rights of Muslims and Jays and kept them out of the city. And I've been actually listening to some stuff about the Crusades and how such a bunch of bullshit lies that were told about that. Spielberg did literally a movie about it like maybe a year ago. I don't even know what he called it. Maybe probably the Crusades or something like that. But Naira from Signal Before Silence talks about that. Anyways. Okay, see. Oh, okay, yeah. So, under Crusader rule, when the conquerors from Western Europe repressed the rights of Muslims and Jays and kept them out of the city, under the British mandate, officials of a foreign empire were in control. Politics impelled Britain from time to time to contrive a strange balancer between denominational claims and needs. For example, the appointment of an Arab mayor, although the majority of the population was Jayish, and the restriction of religious practice for the Jays was their holiest shrine, the Western Wall, where they were forbidden to blow the ram's horn on Rosh Hashanah and on the Day of Atonement when they go into the synagogue and do their cold nighter prayer 3 times, that they're going to lie to the rest of us all year until the next Day of Atonement. The British did not succeed in keeping the city quiet and preventing outbreak of Arab violence against the Jays in 1920 and 1929, in 1936 through 39, and 1947 and 48. Unrest and intercommunal tensions at times disrupted access to the holy places. It is possible that this unrest has, and its consequences, suited the interest of the mandatory power. Christian churches in Jerusalem. The status quo. Churches of diverse denominations are active in Jerusalem. Not anymore, they're not. Their rights and the places to holy Christianity were defined on the course of the 19th century under what has been known since Ottoman days as status quo. It remained in force throughout the period of the British Mandate and is in force in Israel today. The status quo is based on a distinction between religious rights and secular authority. It is not contingent on the city being administered by the followers of any particular religion. It does not depend on Christians sharing in the secular authority as an expression and assertion of their due rights in the places holy to them, nor have Christians ever claimed by law or theology that those places should be under Arab political sovereignty and no other. Christian population in Jerusalem. The Christian population of Jerusalem was 3,390 in 1844. It rose gradually by like 10 fucking times to 31,300. Okay, it went from 3,300 to 31,000, but that's gradually, in 1946. From then on, it dwindled. Many Arab Christians, as well as non-Arab Christians, for example, British civil servants, left Jerusalem as the violence erupted, which culminated in the 1948 war. After that, the hostility of the Jordanian government led more Christians to leave. In 1961, the Christian population was 10,980. After the Six-Day War, the figure was 10,800. In 1970, it was 11,300. The continued trickle of immigration is more than compensated by the rate of natural increase. The rate of immigration has slowed down substantially since 1967. Between 1967 and 1970, an average of some 130 Christian Arabs left each year. An annual average of over 1,000 in the first 12 years of Jordanian rule. Jerusalem and Islam. Jerusalem's first encounter with Islam in the 7th century was also its first encounter with the Arabs, who were Islam's apostles and under its banner acquired a vast empire from the Persian Gulf to the Atlantic Ocean. Muslim Arabs ruled Jerusalem till the end of the 11th century, that is, for about 480 years. Arab rule was not renewed until 1948, when, under the command of British officer, Transjordanian troops seized part of the eastern city and proceeded to administer it for 19 years. There were Muslim rulers in Jerusalem at other times, but they were generally Kurds, Turks, and others, not Arabs. To understand the place of Jerusalem in Islam, we must go back to the time of the Prophet Muhammad. In the first years of his ministry among the Arab tribes, he set out to befriend the Jays of the Arabian Peninsula. To win them over, he ordained that every believer face Jerusalem in his prayers, as was custom of the Jays. But this brought no Jayish converts, and in 623 he made the faithful turn to Mecca. In the surah, quote, the cow of the Quran, we read, we appointed the Qibla direction towards which thou didst formerly pray, only that we might know him who followeth the messenger of God from him who turneth back on his heels, end quote. Pilgrimage to Mecca was prescribed by Muhammad as a first and fundamental duty of believers. Visiting Jerusalem is regarded not as a true pilgrimage, which is called a Hajj, but a brief sojourn, a ziyarah. Pilgrims would call in at Jerusalem on their way back from Mecca, and the faithful sometimes felt that the sight of Jerusalem made up a little for failure to perform the Hajj itself. At the outset of Arabian rule, the Dome of the Rock was built as a monument on the Temple Mount in 691. Over the spot where, according to tradition, the patriarch Abraham bound his son for the sacrifice and the temple had later stood. Yahweh, such a loving God. Subsequently, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Al-Aqsa means the edge, was built in a corner of the mount. In the course of time, it became the third mosque in Muslim sanctity after the shrines of Mecca and Medina, being connected with the tradition that from nearby Muhammad rose to heaven. That Muslim theology does not require that there be a Muslim political sovereignty over Jerusalem is proved by the acceptance of internationalization by Arab states. At no moment of Muslim rule, whether by Arabs or non-Arabs, was Jerusalem a political capital. It was never the capital of a state or even a province. The Umayyad Caliph Suleiman, 715 to 717, commanded that Damascus remain the capital of his kingdom, and Ramla was built as the administrative center of the district to which Jerusalem belonged. It never occurred to him or to any of his successors to make Jerusalem their capital. The Arabs and Jerusalem. Arab control of Jerusalem began in 638 CE. In that year, the soldiers of Caliph Omar occupied the city after a long siege. The conquerors allowed the Jayish and the Christian inhabitants to stay. Allowed the Jayish and Christian inhabitants to stay. This was an act of tolerance, but its implementation reflected the tenet of Islam that Jays and Christians were persons of inferior status. That status was expressed in the enforcement of a poll tax upon them, called a jizya, and the wearing of garments that would identify them on sight and in other ways. Arab rule in Jerusalem was marked by insecurity and ferment. First, the Umayyad caliphs ruled from Damascus, then the Abbasids from Baghdad in 750 CE. Then in 969 CE, the Fatimids from Cairo. In Umayyad days, Jerusalem was of little account. The founding of Ramla in the 8th century as provincial center and the transfer of the imperial capital from Damascus to Baghdad left Jerusalem even further away from the centers of power and cultural activity. The period was marked by occasional destruction or confiscation of Christian churches and Jayish synagogues and a sporadic persecution of their worshippers. In 966 CE, a mob inflamed by agents of the Caliphate set fire to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the church on Mount Zion, and unalived Patriarch John. Confiscated churches were made into mosques. Bigotry and oppression persisted through the reign of the Caliph Hakim, 1099 to 1020 CE. The rebuilt Church of the Holy Sepulchre was destroyed, and many other churches and synagogues were destroyed with it. Arab rule returned to Jerusalem in 1948 when a Transjordanian army led by a British officer overran the eastern part of the city. This was after the Arab states had rejected the decision of the General Assembly of the United Nations in 1947 to partition mandatory Palestine into a Jewish and Arab state and to internationalize Jerusalem. After the War of 1948, all the Arab states except Transjordan altered their stand and championed internationalization with the aim of keeping Yasharel out. In April 1950, Jordan, having changed its name for the occasion, annexed the areas which it had occupied, including East Jerusalem. The other Arab states then convened the Arab League with the intention of expelling Jordan from these areas, but a compromise was reached. The Arab states agreed to view the annexed areas as held in chancery by Jordan, while Jordan viewed them as permanent parts of the Hashemite kingdom. Jordan's occupation of East Jerusalem ended in 1967 after it had deliberately opened war in the city. In August 1969, the El Aqsa Mosque was set on fire by a deranged Christian tourist, whereupon Arab spokesmen charged Israel with arson. Yeah, blame it on the Christians. That's what you guys usually do when it's really you guys behind all of it. Like all of this Arab schmerism is really the IDF and Mossad, okay? Allegedly. Anyways. Okay. Yasharel, in fact, helped to prevent the mosque from being burnt to the ground by instantly summoning fire brigades to the scene. Firemen from towns in the West Bank and Yasharel subdued the flames. For political reasons, the Muslim Waqf administration, which is responsible for the management and upkeep of the mosque, tried to prevent repairs. The repairs were eventually begun against the wishes of Jordan, but with the Egyptian backing. And then it just goes into the population of Jerusalem from 1844 to 1973, of which I could give zero fucking fucks. Excuse my French. And then I'm just going to keep this. Okay. We may go over 45 minutes by like, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, but this is it. This is the last part. The question of boundaries. How valid is the Arab claim to the occupied territories? The boundaries of Near East countries were fixed largely by the great powers after the defeat of the Ottoman Empire in World War I. None of the current borders are sanctified more than 70 years of history. Lines were drawn arbitrarily with little regard for economic or strategic necessity. Under the Romans, Palestina was divided into three interdependent districts: Judea and Samaria, the Galilee and Transjordan, and the Negev. The Muslim caliphates combined the three districts into two: Palestine and Al-Urdan, which is Jordan. The Arabs adopted the geographic definition, quote, Schmionism, which the Romans had created to erase even the memory of Jewish sovereignty. Shirjan. The Ottoman Empire redrew the map. The Vilayet of Sidon ran along the Mediterranean coast from Latakia south to Jaffa. The Vilayet of Damascus ran south and included Transjordan and the center of Palestine down to Nablus. The Vilayet of Aleppo was to the north of these two regions. The remainder of what was later to be known as Schmelestein, from Jaffa to the Sinai Peninsula and eastward toward the Jordan River, was a separate district called the Sanjak of Jerusalem. Quote, Egypt always owned the Sinai, end quote. Many boundary lines in Asia and Africa have been fixed by the great powers in service of their own interest. Thus, ironically, Egypt owes her ownership of the Sinai Peninsula to the British, and it is an ironic sequel that today Egypt wants the great powers to help her regain the Sinai, which she lost to Israel in the Six-Day War in 1967. The Sinai Peninsula has been one of the most crossed but least occupied pieces of real estate on the earth. At the beginning of the modern era in 1517, the Turkish Sultan Selim I took the Sinai route to conquer Egypt, beginning more than 400 years of Turkish suzerainty. Suzerainty? I've never even seen that word before. During this period, an Egyptian pasha appointed by the Sultan ruled Egypt and bits and pieces of Sinai, then known as Arabia Petraea. Napoleon threatened Turkish dominion when he subdued Egypt and used the Sinai as a convenient highway to conquer the Levant. But the Turkish janissary drove the French out of the desert and all of Egypt in 1800. So it remained until the restless Pasha of Egypt, Muhammad Ali, under the generalship of his son Ibrahim, crossed the Sinai in 1831. Encouraged by victories in Schmionism, Syria, and Anatolia, he threatened Constantinople itself by the end of the decade. However, European powers, under the leadership of Great Britain, saved the Turks and forced Ibrahim back to the Nile, where the Sultan told Ali, quote, "I grant unto thee the government of Egypt within its ancient boundaries," end quote. Why are they all speaking the king's English? However, the Sultan permitted Egypt to administer the northwestern wedge of Sinai, not because it was within, quote, Egypt's ancient boundaries, end quote, or because of previous territorial claims, but in order to compensate Ali for the relinquishing his administration of Crete. The proclamation established the Rafah to Suez borderlines, the first defined frontiers between Egyptian administered Sinai and Turkish Sinai. Completion of the Suez Canal in 1869 enhanced importance of the Sinai Peninsula as a buffer to protect the east bank of the canal, and the British, who had entered Egypt in force in 1882, maneuvered to enlarge it. The distrustful Turks tried to weaken and erode the Sinai buffer, but British de facto control of Egyptian affairs became irresistible, and a new arrangement was forced on the Sublime Porte. In 1892, a new frontier was drawn from the vicinity of Rafah to the head of the Gulf of Aleppo, and only then did the present Sinai frontier take shape. Okay. In 1905 through 06, Abdul Hamid, the Turkish Sultan, made a determined attempt to regain the Sinai, but he failed, and the 1892 arrangements were confirmed. This line was not a border in its classical sense. Egypt was still part of the Ottoman Empire. The Rafah-Aqaba line merely separated the Ottoman area from the Anglo-Egyptian administered area. As Egyptian affairs were entirely decided by the imperial interest of Great Britain, Egypt had little to say in all these border disputes. Thus, Egyptian jurisdiction over the Sinai today is a direct result of British colonial policy. And I think that part of that's probably BS too, because they're trying to legitimize Britain's right to give them Schmalestein, which I do not believe was their right to give. When World War I threatened in 1914, the British moved to strengthen the Sinai buffer between the hostile Turks and the Suez Canal through the Rothschild Zionist money. Okay. They announced that the suzerainty of Turkey over Egypt was terminated, and that Egypt was their protectorate. Sinai became a battlefield. The Turks sent patrols into Sinai and harassed the British administrative center of Nakol. In early 1915, the Turks attacked the canal itself. They failed, and the tide in the Sinai turned. At first, Arab forces offered some token aid to the British, but as Major C.S. Jarvis, governor of Sinai from 1923 to 1936, wrote, quote, "Arabs suffered considerable loss at Tur 1916, and this appeared to satisfy their martial ardor as they took no further part in the war," end quote. The British carried on alone and took Rafah. The Sinai episode of World War I was over. British arms had secured the Sinai, and their claims to it were, therefore, supported by the right of conquest. There was even some discussion of annexing Sinai, but President Wilson rejected the idea. Isn't it funny how the Britain's right of conquest over Schmalestein is cool, and the Yasharelis, the Jays, they act like that is their right to that land, even though they're not from there. They've never were from there. But like when, the Spanish, quote unquote, Christopher Columbus, whatever the cover story is, that how we got colonized or whatever by the British, we are land stealers and bad colonialists. It's like, and all of this comes from the Jays. They literally talk out of both sides of their mouths. That's why you've got to realize where your information is coming from. Consider the source. Okay. At the Lausanne Peace Conference in 1923, Turkey gave up all non-Turkish territories lost in the war. It renounced rights and titles over Egypt. Thus, along with Egypt, Great Britain also inherited the Sinai Peninsula. Anglo-Egyptian relations steadily worsened after World War I, despite termination of the Protectorate and the granting of independence in 1922. The English finally agreed in 1936 to end their military occupation except for the immediate vicinity of the canal. The Egyptians then moved in, inheriting the British colonial border, but Egypt, now becoming expansionist, was unwilling to abide by this frontier. Egypt invaded the new state of Yasharel in 1948 in defiance of the UN partition resolution. Egypt lost, and as Yasharel forces crossed Sinai, nearing the Suez Canal, the British prepared to come to Egypt's assistance. Rather than accept the humiliation of support from the hated British, the Egyptians agreed to enter into an armistice agreement with the victorious Israelis. A substitute for real peace, the General Armistice Agreement of February 1949 provided that the demarcation lines, quote, were not to be construed in any sense as a political or territorial boundary, end quote. In addition, the only function of the armistice line was, quote, to delineate the line beyond which the armed forces of the respective parties shall not move, end quote. But the Egyptians would not sign a peace treaty which would have clearly defined the border. Lebanon and Syria. After World War I, France and Britain carved up the region. The French took over the area now known as Lebanon and Syria. The British received the remainder of the Fertile Crescent states, Schmionism and Iraq. In 1923, the League of Nations recognized the French mandates. Soon borders were again redrawn. In 1926, Lebanon was separated from Syria and was made an independent state. It was enlarged to include Beirut, Tripoli, Sidon, the Bekaa Valley, and the region to the Palestine border. This meant that Lebanon would have enough Christians to justify a separate government and enough Muslims to warrant the need for continued French protection. The waters of the Litani River were given to Lebanon at French insistence. The French had deposed Faisal in Syria. To assuage him, Britain installed him as the ruler of the new kingdom of Iraq. Later, in 1922, the British put Faisal's brother Abdullah on the throne of the newly created Transjordan. The boundaries of Schmionism also reflected British-French agreement. Quote, the West Bank belongs to Jordan, end quote. The Jordan River was the frontier between Schmionism and Transjordan after 1922. Foreign Relations of the United States, 1947, the Near East published a declassified dispatch of November 21, 1947 from Nicholas Haji Vasilou, then Greek charge d'affaires to Transjordan. Vasilou wrote, quote, King Abdullah did state that his army would occupy Palestine, land to the west and the north, and that 6,000 desert legionnaires were already in Palestine. It is obviously Abdullah's intention to keep as much as possible of those parts of Palestine allocated to the Arabs, end quote, by UNSCOP. In 1948, Abdullah's Arab Legion invaded Schmionism, seizing the West Bank and the old city of Jerusalem. Transjordan formally annexed the West Bank in 1950, changing its name to Jordan. Under the partition resolution, the West Bank had been allocated to the Schmionism Arab state, and West Bank Arabs opposed Jordan's takeover. Only two governments, Britain and Pakistan, recognized the annexation de jure. The United States never recognized Jordan's annexation de jure, nor did the United States recognize Jordan's occupation of the old city, Golan Heights. This range was part of Syria. It was a strategic asset overlooking the northern part of Yasharel. It was used for 20 years as a base for attacks on Israel settlers and fishermen for plans to prevent Israel from drawing her share of the Jordan River sources. Gaza. This strip along the Mediterranean coast was allotted to the proposed Arab state under the partition resolution, but was seized and held by Egyptian forces for 20 years until the Six-Day War. Quote, acquisition of territory by force is inadmissible. The Arabs and the Soviets insist upon this, end quote. Tsarist Russia and the USSR have both been unparalleled land grabbers. Well, you know why? Because they're full of Talmudic Jays. They're Eastern Europeans. They're of the same ilk as the inhabitants of Schmionism. The tiny principality of Moscow expanded 100-fold by armed conquest over 5 centuries, according to the Barnes and Noble Historical Atlas of the World. Barnes and Noble, yeah, real authoritative. Russia absorbed in chronological order the Moscow hinterland, Novgorod, the Khanate of the Kazan, the Khanate of Astrakhan, Polish Smolensk, Ingria, Estonia, Karelia, Livonia, and Khanate of the Crimea, the Ukraine, Lithuania, East Poland, Central Poland, Moldavia, and the South Caucasus, which is where you motherfuckers are really from. Russian acquisitions in the 19th century alone: West Turkestan, Bokhara, Turkmenistan, Southwest Caucasus, Amur Province, and Sakhalin. A few of these areas, the Baltic states and East Europe, were indeed the other states for granted independence. All these Tsarist acquisitions by force inspired the Soviet imperialists who carved up Europe after World War II. The Soviet Union seized or reabsorbed Karelia from Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, all previously independent, Galicia and East Poland from Poland, Bessarabia from Germany, and the Kuril Islands from Japan. In addition, the USSR redrew the map. South Dobruja and South Moldavia were taken from Romania and given to Bulgaria. West Prussia and part of East Prussia, the heart of Germany, were attached to Poland. Unimpressed by international niceties, the USSR kicked out Germans, Poles, and Finns, where their presence conflicted with the new nationality of the land. No one mentioned compensation or resettlement, let alone repatriation to, quote, stolen lands. In 1948, Egypt absorbed Sinai and Gaza. Jordan took over the West Bank. The Saudis conquered their domain from competing local sheikhs, however you say it. Only with an Yasharel administration has an outcry arisen over the, quote, inadmissibility of territorial acquisition by force, which is what the fuck y'all really did. Okay, there are some maps, and beyond that, this book is freaking all but over, except for one little tiny paragraph about Schmionism today, the Jerusalem program. The aims of Schmionism are the unity of the Jewish people and the centrality of Yasharel in Jewish life, the ingathering of the Jewish people in its historic homeland, Eretz Yisrael, through Aliyah from all countries, the strengthening of the state of Yasharel founded on the prophetic ideals of justice and peace. Yeah, real justice I'm seeing coming out of this satanic state of unalivers and idolaters. The preservation of the identity of the Jewish people through the fostering of a Jewish and Hebrew education and of Jewish spiritual and cultural values, the protection of the Jewish rights everywhere. Adopted by the 27th World Shmionist Congress, Jerusalem, June 1968. And we are done with this book full of lies. Anyways, thank you for sitting a little longer and reading along with me. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. I love you all. God bless. Aaron Mack, BS Detector, out.